Once upon a time, at the foot of lush green mountains, there was a village filled with daisies. In this village lived a sweet and cheerful girl named Aslı. Every day she would run and play in the daisy field, and she loved touching the soft petals of the flowers. The daisies were her best friends. One morning, as the sun shone brightly in the sky, Aslı woke up with joy. She immediately set off to the daisy field. When she arrived at the field, she noticed something different that day. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, and a gentle breeze was softly brushing her hair. Aslı was curious about where the lovely scent was coming from, so she began to follow it. After walking a little, she saw a glowing light in the middle of the daisies. The light was growing bigger and bigger. Filled with curiosity, Aslı moved closer to the light. Suddenly, a tiny, shining fairy emerged from it. Aslı couldn't believe her eyes. "Wow, who are you?" she asked. The tiny fairy smiled warmly and answered in a soft voice. "Hello, Aslı. I'm the flower fairy. I've heard how much you love the daisy field. Today I want to take you to the magical world of the daisies. What do you say? Will you come with me?" Aslı's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Of course I'll come," she shouted happily. The flower fairy waved her magical wand gently, and suddenly, Aslı became a tiny girl. Now the daisies around her looked enormous. The petals of the daisies were like giant tents. Aslı looked around in amazement and exclaimed, "Wow! Everything is so big." The flower fairy smiled kindly and said, "This is the magical world of the daisies, Aslı. Here, every daisy can talk to you. If you listen carefully, they'll tell you how special they are." As Aslı joyfully ran among the daisies, a gentle breeze began to blow. The breeze softly swayed the petals of the daisies. Aslı listened to the whispers of the wind and suddenly noticed the daisies playing a melody. The melody was so beautiful that it filled Aslı's heart with happiness. It felt like the daisies were singing a song just for her. Smiling, Aslı said, "I love this melody." The song of the daisies left a deep sense of love in Aslı's heart. The flower fairy looked at Aslı with a sweet smile and said, "Now, I'm going to take you to the most secret and special garden of the flowers. There, flowers like no other in the world are waiting for you." Aslı's eyes widened with excitement and she nodded eagerly. "Yes, please." The flower fairy gently took Aslı's hand, and together they began walking deep into the daisy field. After a while, a hidden door appeared behind a giant daisy. The flower fairy used her magical wand to open the door, and Aslı found herself in a magical garden filled with colorful flowers. This garden was so beautiful that every flower seemed to glow like it had taken a color from the rainbow. Aslı looked around in wonder and said, "This is an amazing place." The flowers smiled at her with joy, and butterflies flew around, playing with her. As Aslı wandered through the magical garden full of colorful flowers, she noticed a flower that was different from the others. This flower was shining with golden petals and spreading a sweet fragrance. Aslı approached the flower and gently touched its petal. At that moment, a beam of light rose from the flower and floated towards the sky. The flower fairy smiled at Aslı and said, "This is the wish flower. Think of the most beautiful wish in your heart and close your eyes." Aslı closed her eyes and thought of the wish in her heart. "I wish I could always be with these wonderful flowers and the flower fairy." When Aslı opened her eyes, the lights from the flower were dancing around her, twinkling like stars in the sky. At that moment, Asla's heart was filled with love and happiness. The flower fairy turned to her and said, "This garden will always be here for you, Aslı. As long as you keep love and kindness in your heart, you can return to this magical world whenever you wish." Aslı hugged the flower fairy and thanked her, then started walking towards the exit of the garden. Just before stepping out, she turned around, looked at the magical garden one last time, and whispered, "I'll come back one day." As Aslı walked home, a big smile spread across her face. From then on, every time she visited the daisy field, she would remember the existence of that magical garden and the stories the flowers would tell her. The story of the flower fairy and Aslı ends here, but from that day on, Aslı continued to discover the beauty in every corner of nature, always carrying the magical world the flower fairy had shown her in her heart.